Good morning, Becky. There are plenty, including the President Trump has begun to allude to a transfer of power. At a Friday Rose Garden event, he obliquely referenced another administration, and then in a tweet yesterday, he began it simply with the words, "He won," followed by some false claims about the election being rigged, even as the Trump campaign was dropping the majority of its legal challenge in Pennsylvania, which was one of the last remaining challenges outstanding that a judge had not overturned. Meanwhile, several Biden advisors were appearing on the Sunday shows over the weekend, airing a steady drumbeat of frustration about not being able to meet with the coronavirus task force and not getting real-time information about pandemic preparedness because there has not been this official handover. Well, Ron KLAIN, who is the chief of staff for the Biden transition and the incoming Biden White House, he essentially said that he hopes the General Services Administration makes this ascertainment this week to enable that show to get on the road. But he said that he did agree with Senate Republicans that there should be a stimulus deal in the lame duck session. Here's what he said.
There's a lot of things that are going to have to wait until Joe Biden is president, but this is not one of them. Getting help to people, getting help to state and local governments. I mean, it's not, we need urgent help to individuals, but we're going to see layoffs of police, of firefighters, of teachers in the next month in a lot of states and localities unless these local governments get the aid they need.
He stressed the need for that urgency. He said that Democrats are united in trying to push for that. Speaker Pelosi, meanwhile, has said that her position from before the election has not changed. She had been pushing for a rather high number that Republicans, it is believed, would still not be able to get behind. So it's still unclear exactly how they would get to yes on that package. And finally, guys, I just want to show you a few of the companies that the Biden transition is in discussions with. KLAIN said that regular consultations with Pfizer and other vaccine candidates will begin this week. And I've also learned that the Biden team has been in regular contact with CVS and Walgreens for months, even preceding the election, to figure out potential distribution of this vaccine, because the expectation is, you will need to be distributing tens of millions of vials of this vaccine, sort of dovetailing with the inauguration in the early days of this administration. So they're at least trying to establish those lines of communication unofficially, even as officially here in Washington, those keys haven't been handed over.
Hey, Kayla, interesting to hear Ron KLAIN talking about what needs to be done in the lame duck session. That doesn't mean anything is going to get done. And if you look at it, there are some pretty high hurdles. I think it's probably more difficult now to try and get a deal passed than it would have been before the election, when you had an administration that was really pushing for that. They have stepped back and said that they'll let McConnell and Pelosi be the ones who determine this. And even the calendar itself, there's not a lot of legislative time left because of the Thanksgiving holiday and then the end of the year Christmas holidays. They're not in session much. What are the odds that something actually gets done before Inauguration Day?
Well, they're not in session much, Becky, but they do have one major priority, and that is continuing to fund the government past December 11th. Now, lawmakers in both parties have a history of sort of getting in line behind these must-pass pieces of legislation and being able to add things that pose urgent need to these legislative vehicles, as they call them here. So there is a potential that, depending on how bad the virus gets, how much funding is needed, that there could be an effort to try to pass some sort of stimulus attached to funding the government, because that is seen as a must-do item on the to-do list before people go home for the holidays. Now, certainly, both parties have very different priorities when it comes to stimulus. Democrats want a very high number. Republicans have wanted a lower number. And Democrats on multiple legislative priorities, rural broadband, drug pricing. Throughout the summer, we saw them hold their fire in anticipation of a potential Democratic White House because their belief was that they would get a multiple of the dollar figure that they would get otherwise if they were to reach a compromise with Republicans in the interim. That dynamic has not changed, but what has changed is the seriousness of the virus. We saw in March partisan differences were put aside. A major piece of legislation, the largest in American history, was passed. So we'll just see if that sort of urgency presents itself again.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.